Hey there, it's Lee here again. So this time out, I'm wanting to talk about why pain is a part of life, but suffering itself is a choice. And there is a distinction between these that I'm going to dig into in this video. So I hope that's going to prove enlightening for you. It's a lesson I really want to share and want more people to understand like I now do. But why am I talking about this? So I've mentioned before, and I have talked about it before as well, but I have my Success and Fulfillment program, which is based on 4 pillars. Now, one of those pillars is health and fitness. And again, I've gone into that in a bit more detail in the previous video. But in terms of health and fitness itself, what I'm keen to stress is twofold. One is that it's not about your health and fitness, building that for tomorrow. It's about having it today. So the whole program is about living a fulfilled life and being successful while we do that. But to be fulfilled and really to be successful, if we really want to be and maintain that and have that long-lasting legacy of success, we need to be healthy while we're doing it, not just waiting for tomorrow to try and become healthy, which we may or may not be able to do. So I'm a massive advocate for being fit and healthy in the now, because that also, props us up better for the future as well. But beyond that, the second key part of this is that it's not just physical health or physical fitness, it's your mental and emotional health as well. So it's overall well-being. Now, I personally have been through the mill a little bit in my life. I'm not shy to admit it. I've had my struggles with mental health. I've come through a lot of them. I still have the odd blip here and there, and I seek out the help when I need it. That's just, part of our lives, unfortunately, for a lot of us these days. But it's important to recognize this and not shy away from it. And what I'm talking about in this video really comes back to that, because the bigger part of it is all about your mindset. It's how you perceive events or perceive situations and what happens to you, what you cause to happen, how you react to them, how you respond to people around you, all these different things. And it all comes back to your mindset, which is actually why that's part of one of the other pillars that I've incorporated into the program, which is all about purpose, vision and mindset. So it's 1/3 of that triad really. But mindset is such an important thing. We really need to have more or less control of our own minds as best we can to then allow us to have the overall well-being, our overall health. So I just wanted to give that brief intro. And what I want to do now is really dig into the topic. Now, to begin with, I want to talk about pain. So pain is an intrinsic part of our lives. It's something that we cannot get away from, something that we can't really avoid. We can try, and we absolutely should try. I'm not advocating we should be in pain here. But you think about how our bodies are wired. We're wired for survival, and we have a central nervous system. Now, I know this is a big generalization. There are people out there who have disabilities and issues and problems with their nervous system. So I'm not trying to account for every single person here in every single circumstance. I'm just trying to give the generalized view as best I can. And I'm not here to offend anyone. And I apologize if anyone is getting offended having watched this. But this is very much just a general view and a general interpretation of how we're wired. And the default wiring, our default nature, is that we have this central nervous system, and it's there to process our interactions and the responses to these reactions, so we know what's going on around us. And that's both positive and negative. But an intrinsic part of that is feeling pain. And that ties into our survival instinct, which is that we want to avoid pain, because pain is ultimately telling us that something is causing us harm. So you put your hand on a hot stove, you put your hand in a fire, you're going to get a pain response through your nervous system, which is going to tell you to withdraw your hand because it's in pain. And that pain is a survival instinct because it's telling you to remove yourself from harm. It's telling you to withdraw your hand from the fire so as not to be burned and potentially disformed, disfigured, lose the hand, whatever it may be. So it's a core part of who we are, is pain. It's a natural response. So it's not necessarily something to shy away from. I'm not suggesting that we actively go out and seek pain, because that means that we're putting ourselves in harmful situations. And as I said, this isn't just about the physical side of it, it's also the mental and emotional side. This is about not just exposing yourself to situations where you can be physically hurt, if someone's throwing darts at you or something like that could really injure you. But it's also not exposing yourself to the people who could cause you emotional or mental pain, those who are dragging you down and causing you problems by berating you, being negative around you, all these different aspects and elements of people's psyches. And they may not even realize they're doing it. It could all be accidents, same as physical harm can be accidental. But pain is essentially the recognition of that, the response to it to a degree, where our body is naturally saying, well, look, I'm in pain here because I'm getting harmed or I'm about to be harmed. I need to get away from this thing, whether that's physical or mental. So it's worth bearing in mind. But that is essentially my definition of pain from me to you. And again, happy to take feedback on this. Other people have different interpretations, but that really is what pain is. And it is just unavoidable. And taking it away from that specific context and definition, and we talk about it more generally, let's say you're just walking down the street. You could just be walking down the street and trip up. No one's caused you to do that. Obviously people could push you, but let's assume no one's about. You could just genuinely fall over. You may not be paying attention, hit a curb, hit a stone, whatever it may be, and it causes you to fall over. And then what happens is you end up in pain. You've banged your knee and you've scraped that knee and it's maybe bleeding. You could do yourself some fair damage. You're in pain. And what that pain response is telling you is that you need to protect that limb, that bone, that element of whatever it is that's caused, has ended up in pain, has been harmed. So some of this is also retrospective. Some of it you cannot prevent, in the sense of, if you're falling over like that, yes, you could catch yourself, but let's assume you can't. You can't prevent that pain of landing on your knee and cutting it. But what it's then telling you by being in pain is that you need to protect that and you need to help it heal. And that's what we then go and do. But that pain is something that it has happened. We cannot avoid it. Yes, we will try, and we should absolutely try. I'm not, again, suggesting we go out and actively try and harm ourselves, but pain is the response to the harm or the introduction of harm into our lives. So it's just something that we're always going to come across. Some people more than others, obviously, and I'm not suggesting, again, that you go out and seek it, but again, you try and avoid it as best you can. That's our survival instinct kicking in. But one day or another, you're going to be in pain. It's just what happens. Unfortunately, I don't think there's really anyone who could avoid that in their entire lives. Obviously, that's a general statement. There's probably someone somewhere who's either managed it or will manage it, but pretty much certain that the majority of us are going to experience pain at some point in our lives. So that then brings me on to suffering. I'll keep that example of the knee going throughout this, but suffering is essentially how you react and how you respond to being in pain. Now, pain is a physical thing. Pain, and obviously it could be mental as well, but pain is an actual tangible thing. It's something that our bodies are experiencing or our minds are experiencing. So it's something that is an actual event, an actual feeling, whatever you want to call it, but it exists, it's there. Suffering is more of an emotional response to the pain. So pain is a result of harm or an avoidance potentially of incoming harm. But suffering is the result and the outcome of all of that. It's the outcome of the harm, it's the outcome of the pain. But it's more down to how we respond to it and how we recognize it. Now, this isn't to belittle anyone. I'm not suggesting that if you're in pain, then that's ridiculous and you shouldn't be. Of course I'm not. And there will be people out there who are unavoidably suffering. And unfortunately, that is the case for certain people. So again, I'll stress this is a generalization. But suffering, in the majority of cases, is a choice, because we can choose to what level we allow these things to affect us. So in this context, this is pain, but more generally, that could be events that happen to us and around us that are outside of our control, or even things that we've caused that are inside our control. It's up to us how much we choose to actually suffer by choosing to respond to it in that way. So I'll return to that example to try and make this a bit more clear, because it's not the easiest subject to maybe get your head around, and I completely understand that, and I want to try and help you with the outlook of this, the mindset behind it all. But let's say that you've undertaken that example there of falling down and hurting your knee. So you've scraped the knee, you've cut the skin, it's bleeding and so on. So you are in pain, there's no denying that. But then you have two types of people with this. You have those that will maybe get up and shrug it off and just carry on. Now, that doesn't mean they're not in pain, but they're not suffering. They're just in a bit of pain. That's something that will go away because it doesn't last forever. Pain is generally quite temporary. So they're just getting up and carrying on. But then you have the others who will allow it to affect them, and they're the ones who are then suffering. So you have the ones who will get up, or they'd roll around on the floor a little bit, say, before they get back up. So the exact same injury, exact same body part, but yet one person gets up, walks away quite happily, accepts that they're in a bit of pain, but just gets on with things and doesn't allow it really to affect them. But then you have those who really focus on that element of they've hurt themselves, they're in pain, and they cause themselves to suffer, because it then has a lasting impact on what they're doing, whether it be that day, that week, that month, by them really focusing on the pain. And it's where they're putting their attention, and they're allowing themselves to suffer. And I guess this is what I'm trying to get at. Suffering is a result of what we are experiencing, but the extent to that suffering is a complete choice of our own. If we respond to it and just say, well, I'm in a bit of pain, it's hurt a little bit, okay, fine, that's a tiny bit of suffering. But if we allow it to really bed in and we allow it to stop us doing things, that's actually the suffering part. You're getting up and walking away, but you're not really suffering because you're not stopping what you're doing. You've just had a temporary blip, you're in a bit of pain, that will go, it'll heal, you carry on. But if you allow it to have an impact on your life, an impact on your day, your activities, then that is you suffering. That's you allowing yourself to suffer as well. So again, this is, to stress, a very much generalized opinion and a generalized view. And this cannot, unfortunately, apply to every single person on the face of this earth. But the majority of us, the vast majority of us, do have this choice that we can make. And that's what it boils down to, because if you want to be successful in life, there are things that you have to do. And there are things that you're going to have to do when you don't like to do them or when you're in a bit of pain. Now, I'm not suggesting that if you've gone off and broken your arm that you need to work at the same capacity as you were prior to breaking your arm. Of course not. Now, you're going to be in pain for breaking your arm, but do you want to suffer with that, or do you just want to accept that you're in pain and you just carry on? Now, the difference there is if you choose to suffer, if you say, oh, I've broken my arm and I can't do anything and I'm not going to do anything, well, you won't do anything. Then how is that making you successful? Because you're not progressing yourself, you're not moving forwards. Whereas, again, taking the same viewpoint of, well, or same example, should I say, and having a different viewpoint and saying, well, I've broken my arm. Yes, I can't do everything that I used to do. I can't do everything that I did prior to breaking my arm. I maybe will be able to one day again once it's healed, and that's the intention. But for the time being, I'll just do whatever I can and I'll just get on with it. And if I'm a bit more pain, maybe I take some painkillers or some pain relief, or maybe I just pace myself. I rest in between and space out the times that I'm working or moving myself forward. But the key thing here is that you are moving forwards. And it just really, that's what it boils down to. It's your mindset to it. It's how you respond and react to the event that's happened to you. And really, it's about that success and that fulfillment bit, because you cannot be successful if you allow yourself to suffer, because you will just stop. You will not progress. And if you do, it will be in fits and starts in between bouts of suffering, and that's not a healthy way to live. Likewise, you're not going to be fulfilled, because if you're fulfilled, you're enjoying life, you're enjoying all the things you do. Now, I'm not suggesting you should enjoy 100% of the things you do, that's impossible. But you should be either enjoying what you're doing out of pure enjoyment, or getting the fulfillment out of the activity by understanding that, yes, I may not be enjoying this, but it's building something for me tomorrow, next week, that I allow to then enjoy. You're going to work for a lot of people dislike work and then they moan about it. Well, okay, there are different ways to view this, and obviously there's different responses I can give, but the example I'm going to give here is, well, okay, you don't enjoy your work, but what is that giving you? Well, that's giving you an income. What's the income giving you? It's giving you a roof over your head, it's giving you food for your belly, it's giving you water, it's paying your utilities, so you've got heat. You know, you may have a car, you may have bicycles, you may have motorbikes, you know, you may own your house. Working is the thing that gives you this. So whilst you may not enjoy your work, which unfortunately a lot of people don't, they don't enjoy their jobs, you could still be getting fulfillment through that. And that's, again, a mindset shift. And it actually ties back into that viewpoint of suffering, because that worker who is going to work and not enjoying their work and then just be miserable about the fact that they're working all the time, well, they're suffering and they're causing themselves to suffer. But the other worker who's doing the same job, you know, for the same hours, the same money, but then he's viewing that from the perspective of, well, I'm doing this because it's a necessity, so that it allows me to experience and enjoy other aspects of my life, and therefore they're getting more fulfillment out of their life. Well, they're not suffering. And when they're in the pain aspect, which is maybe the work in this example, both workers are experiencing the same pain, but one is choosing to accept it as a necessary evil, maybe, until they can maybe move on to something better, build their own business, go into a different job or a different role. But the other one is allowing that pain to take over and then causing them to suffer. And the suffering then bleeds into the rest of their lives. So they're not going to be happy, because, you know, they're just waiting for the paycheck. They're waiting for the weekend to finish, so they're going back to work and they don't experience what they could on a weekend. Whereas the other person, they're making the most out of their lives. Yes, they're working the same hours. They may be in a bit of pain while they're doing it because they're not enjoying it, but they understand and accept why they're doing it, and it's maybe a step towards something better. But outside of that, they are making the time to be fulfilled, to live happily, to live through enjoyment, and therefore they're not suffering. So the pain is very temporary, which is something I said a bit early in the video, that pain is generally something that's temporary. Yes, it can last, you know, for longer spells than we would anticipate sometimes, and there are things that we can do about that. However, generally speaking, pain is temporary, because pain is a response from our bodies or our minds to a situation or event or circumstance that is causing us harm or is about to cause us harm. Once that harm has ended or doesn't actually happen, then we have no pain. Pain ends. But if we've chosen to suffer through all of this, well, the suffering can continue. So the pain may no longer be there, but the suffering can be. So you have a choice to make, and that was really the crux of the video. You do have that choice to make. How much are you going to allow yourselves to suffer? I'm not suggesting that if you do get hurt and you're in a bit of pain that you shouldn't step off the gas a little bit and you shouldn't back off things a little bit. Of course you should. You know, I've had an issue with my back quite recently, and that caused me to back off a lot of what I was doing because I just physically could not get through a lot of the activities. However, it didn't stop me because I did make continual progress. I just had to reduce the amount of what I was able to do based on my capabilities at the time. And therefore I wasn't suffering. If I was suffering, I would have completely stopped, which would have meant that I was in pain at the time and therefore suffering at the time as well. But then I would also be suffering posthumously beyond that, because at that point I'm trying to play catch up, or I've not progressed as much as I would want to be, and I cannot really make that time back up because once the time's spent, it's gone. So therefore the suffering is just compounded and just extended and continues. So again, I stress, we all have this choice to make. Pain is a part of our lives. It's unavoidable in most circumstances. We need to do our best to try and avoid it. We all want to survive and live the best we can, but sometimes it just happens. But when it happens, we deal with it, we accept it, and then we move on as best we can to the best of our capabilities in that moment. If we have physical injuries or mental injuries that are causing us issues, we get them dealt with as best we can. But the key to this is accepting that that is the situation. It's not bemoaning it. It's not being negative and playing yourself down because of it. It's just accepting it for what it is. If you are physically injured, if you are mentally injured, in that moment, there's generally not a huge amount you can do immediately for it. It takes time to heal, sometimes quicker than others, fine. But you can absolutely choose how you respond to that and how much you allow yourself then to suffer. And that's really what this video was all about. So I hope it's been helpful. If you want me to talk about a little bit more around this or dig into anything in a bit more detail, just have a conversation with me, then just reach out. I'm more than happy to talk to people about these sorts of things, and I absolutely love helping people change their outlook and their perspectives on these things, because this is all it is. It's a mindset shift. So I'll leave you with that, and I'll just see you in the next video.